longevity, it is a hot topic in human healthcare, and now it's actually here in the veterinary space as well. I'm Dr. Sherman Canapp with Canine Longevity, and I'm pleased to bring you Brendan McKenzie, who is here from the company Loyal. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, my first question for you, though, as a general veterinarian who has an incredible reputation in California, is now in this whole world of longevity, wellness, health span. Take me down the path, if you don't mind. And then also, how did you end up with a company like Loyal?
So it was a really amazingly lucky experience for me. So someone at Loyal reached out to me about participating in a clinical study because I'd done a little bit of clinical research. And I was just working full-time in clinical practice as a GP. And unfortunately, there were some changes going on at our practice. I didn't think that we could really participate in a clinical study at that point. But when they told me what they were doing, I said, this is amazing. I stuck my foot in the door. I said, how do I get in? How do I participate and help with this? And at the time, they were short of veterinarians who had a practice background. They mostly had folks who were familiar with research, and they needed somebody who'd been in a room with a patient and knew how that worked. So I came on board as a consultant, and I guess they decided I was useful, so I stayed. And it's just been an incredible learning experience for me, and it's really become a passion.
So are you now helping to direct some of the studies that are going on in the U.S., or what's your role then within Loyal?
I wear a lot of different hats. I do still consult with the folks who do the study design, but that's not my major focus anymore. Honestly, most of what I do is communication. I talk to veterinarians, to dog owners, to anybody who'll listen about what we're doing, where it's going, the potential for treating aging in a new way, for taking a preventive medicine approach to aging, because I think that's the future.
So is there a particular case that you can think of in the past that really led you down the path as well, thinking, man, we're onto something with longevity, or we need something as far as health span with dogs? Is there a particular case you can think of that inspires you?
There are so many, because obviously as a clinician, I'm on the third generation of pets with some of my clients. And so I've seen the life cycle from beginning to end. And it's always so hard when we get to the aging stage and to the end of life. And I'm a dog owner as well, and I've been through that personally. The case that always comes to mind, honestly, is my own dog, Gromit. He was a rescue from a shelter in Texas. He was a big 75-pound Rottweiler lab, big scary-looking dog, total teddy bear, very sweet. And he lived to 16, which is a remarkable age for a dog that size. And the end of his life came about because fundamentally he couldn't get up and walk anymore. And we think of sort of, the end being some dramatic acute disease, but in his case, it was really just the wear and tear of time. And he was happy, but he couldn't function. And that was really sad for me to see that and to have to make that decision. And when I think about the possibility of helping people to delay that decision, to keep dogs enjoying their life as long as they're with us, I get very excited.
So 16?
16.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So that number, so help me understand this. There's that number that goes around of 1 year equals 7 years, and little dogs live way longer than giant breed dogs.
Sure.
So from your understanding, because this is your area of expertise, health span, longevity, is there any truth to that? Is there that 1 to 7 ratio for human years to dog years? Help me understand where that came from.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a myth, and basically it's just simple math misleading us, right? If you look at sort of the average lifespan of a dog and the average lifespan of a person, and you do a little math, then you come up with 7 years to 1 year. But dogs are different. They grow and mature much faster. So a 1-year-old dog is really more like late teens than 7 years old, because they've grown up really fast. And unfortunately, they also age faster, especially at the end of life. So they have a long, stable period, and then things tend to go downhill much more quickly than they do with us. So it's really a different trajectory. And as you pointed out, there are a lot of differences between dogs. Small dogs live much longer than large dogs. And so if you have an Irish Wolfhound,
Which I do.
Which is great. I mean, they're the sweetest dogs. They're wonderful dogs. 7, 8, 9 years, that's pretty far along for an Irish Wolfhound. If you get a little Chihuahua, that's not even middle age yet. And that's largely, to be fair, our fault, right? We've bred dogs for size. We've intensively selected for big. Yeah. And unfortunately, some of the hormonal changes that are required to make dogs bigger also make them age faster. So that's why the large ones don't get as much time as the little guys.
But remember, age is not a disease.
Age is not a disease, but we can make it go better or worse, for sure.
What are some of the misconceptions you think your clients have? And just as you're now on the bandwagon, even talking with other veterinarians around the world, what are some of the misconceptions we have with pet wellness, health span, and longevity?
Honestly, the thing that I hear most often that really hurts me is when I see an older dog and the client says to me, he's fine, doc, he's just slowing down, but that's just age. And they dismiss things that I think really impact the quality of life and the enjoyment their dogs are getting out of their life as normal aging. Because, as you say, aging is not a disease, but that doesn't mean that it isn't something that we should think of as biology, as a series of things that happen that we can understand and maybe do something about, just as we do think about disease. So for me, I'd love for people to understand that, those changes are not things that you're helpless to just sit back and watch, that those are things that we can understand and measure and hopefully in the very near future do something about.
So that leads me, and you mentioned your dog's 16, started slowing down. What are the signs to a client or to a pet parent that their dog is aging? What are the things they look for to say, maybe it's time to intervene, or what do you see at home?
So a lot of them are internal, and we work a lot on things like metabolic health and fitness, which are things you won't see, but there are external signs as well, and they tend to track pretty well. So older dogs will start to lose muscle mass, just like people do. They may get a little chubby, as we all tend to do as we get older, but they also lose strength and ability to move around, so that slowing down is often a sign that maybe they're not as strong as they used to be, maybe they have a little arthritis and they have some pain. They get gray, just like most of us do, and that's a sign of aging. There are a lot of external changes. One of the other ones that people say to me all the time is, does my dog have cataracts? He's got really cloudy eyes. And they don't get cataracts that often, but they do get cloudy eyes. They just don't need to wear bifocals to read like we do because they don't read the paper. But so there are external signs, but there are also internal signs. And I encourage people to, go to see their veterinarian, to have blood work done, to have an evaluation, because sometimes if we catch some of those internal things earlier, there are things we can do to give you more time.
Yeah, and the internal things are so important. They talk about biomarkers and all this GI mapping and inflammation, just diet and all these things that can affect and that has an effect on cognitive function as well. Do you see a change in these older senior geriatric patients as far as cognitive function dysfunction?
Absolutely. Cognitive function is one of the 5 most common causes of death in dogs because it affects their ability to function, to interact with their people. It disrupts that human-animal bond. And it is a progressive disease, very similar in a lot of ways to Alzheimer's in humans. And we have connected it with inflammation, as you say, and with a number of other features of sort of loss of metabolic health as dogs get older. So I'm in part of a working group with Dr. Natasha Olby, who's at NCSU, looking at trying to formalize our understanding of how cognitive dysfunction works and come up with some guidelines for trying to manage it and getting ahead of it earlier.
So you're working with Loyal and incredible company. Tell me a little bit about what's their mission? What's the mission at Loyal?
So the fundamental core of our mission is to change from a reactive approach to aging to a preventive approach. Instead of waiting for diseases to develop and for your dog to no longer be enjoying their life fully, we want to get ahead of that. So we want to take all of the decades of basic science research in aging and turn it into practical therapies. And in particular, we want to develop FDA-approved prescription medications. We think that that's the highest bar to meet in terms of scientific evidence for safety and efficacy, and we think that that's the most practical way to get therapies out to pet owners to help their dogs have longer, healthier lives.
So with the study that you guys have underway, when you're close, it sounds like you guys are really close, there are some other studies going on as well, and I'm very confused. There's one, let me get it correct, it's the Dog Aging Project. There's a few others, and they're looking at a product called rapamycin. Can you give me any information on that? And to the audience that's out there, what is rapamycin? And is that something they should be considering for their dog?
So rapamycin is a drug that's approved in humans for transplant patients. It helps to prevent people from rejecting an organ that's been transplanted into their body. So it has effects on the immune system. That's mostly what it's used for. It turns out that in laboratory animals like rats and mice, it is also known to extend lifespan. And we have some idea about sort of what's under the hood, the internal biology of how that works. So the idea is if it works in those kind of animals, it might work in dogs, it might work in humans. We have to go through the process of testing to see if that's really true, because dogs are not rats and people are not cats, and we all are a little bit different. So the Dog Aging Project is mostly what we call a community science project. They have over 50,000 dogs enrolled, including one of my own dogs, and they collect data every year about what you're feeding and how your dog's health is, and everything they can possibly think of. And then they go and look at that to sort of understand the pattern of aging. How do dogs get older? What kind of problems do they develop? What things may help slow down aging? What things may make it worse? A small part of what the Dog Aging Project is doing is also a clinical trial looking at rapamycin to see if potentially it can extend health span and lifespan in dogs.
That measure is hard to tell. It's years and years and years. Are there other benchmarks that you use for your study or these other studies other than, hey, it seems they've lived longer?
So we're running what we call the STAY study, which is looking at one of our products. It's for approval through the FDA, so we have to follow all of their guidelines, which are quite rigorous. We're going to enroll over 1,000 dogs, which is, we think, the largest clinical drug trial ever in veterinary medicine. And we're going to run that study for 4 to 5 years. And the main thing we're looking at, honestly, is lifespan. Do the dogs who are getting our drug live longer than the dogs who are getting placebo? But we're also taking the opportunity to collect as much information as we can on frailty, on quality of life, all of those biomarkers you talked about, anything we possibly can. Because the best case scenario, the trial works, our drug works, and we have a new tool for vets and for dog owners to use. Worst case scenario, even if we don't get that drug approved, this is going to be an incredible resource of information to help other people understand how aging works in dogs and what else we could maybe do to help them.
Excellent. Now you have 3 products that you're testing. Let me make sure I get this right. There's the LL2, the LL1, and the LO03 rather. The 002 is the one that's close. That's the one that's going through, if I recall correctly, the FDA right now.
Yes.
Have you started the other 2, or are they going to piggyback on the LL002?
So we call them LOI 1, 2, and 3, not very original, and we have them divided into 2 programs. So LOI 1 and LOI 3 are intended to help large breed dogs. As we discussed earlier, large breed dogs have shorter lifespans. They age faster than small dogs, and we think that we understand some of the biology of that. So both of those products are intended to help reduce the levels of a hormone called IGF-1, which helps make dogs big, but we also think increases the rate of aging. And those are not yet at the clinical trial stage. We're hoping in 2027 to start a clinical trial for LOI 3. And then LOI 2, which is the one that is currently in clinical trials, looks at metabolic fitness. We probably, you're maybe a little bit younger than me, but we remember when we were young and you could eat whatever you wanted, and you never gained weight, and you always felt great. And that's not true for me anymore. And that's because our metabolism changes with aging. And the same thing happens to our dogs. And it has a variety of effects, including contributing to the risk of age-related diseases. So LOI 2 is intended to help improve metabolic health and sort of bring some of it back to where you were when you were younger, and also reduce the risk of those age-related diseases.
So for LOI 2, can you give an example of some of the benchmarks or the things that you're tracking as far as objective outcome measures that are telling us, hey, this is actually having an effect?
Sure. The things that are most closely associated with the loss of metabolic health as we get older are changes in insulin levels. So our insulin levels go up. Insulin's a really important hormone for helping us, to process sugar and metabolize food and turn it into energy. And our bodies just are less efficient at doing that as we get older. So then we build up a whole bunch of extra insulin that's not working. And it turns out that can increase the rate of cancer, the rate of things like Alzheimer's disease. So just as in people, dogs' cholesterol goes up as they get older, they don't get the same kind of heart disease we do, but it has other effects that are, not in their best interest. So we're measuring a variety of markers that we think are associated with this loss of metabolic health as they get older. The end of the day, the most important thing is lifespan and health span. So we're looking, of course, at how long they live and at markers of health and quality of life. Again, we're going to collect as much information as we can so that this contributes as much as possible to our understanding of aging in dogs.
So if you were a veterinarian right now and you're listening to this, are you accepting other sites or veterinarians that could potentially join in any of these 3 studies? If so, how would they get in touch with you to potentially become a site?
So for veterinarians and also for dog owners who are interested in participating, you can go to loyal.com. We are still recruiting subjects for the study, so you can put your zip code into our little map and see if there's a site nearby if you want to enroll your dog. For veterinarians, I don't believe we need any more clinical sites for this study, but as I mentioned, we have 2 more products in the pipeline, which are coming really soon. We're doing all of our research in general practices. We want this to be a population of real-world owned dogs, not just laboratory dogs. And so we're definitely going to need more vets to participate in the future. So I encourage you again to go to loyal.com and sign up for our newsletter, and you'll be the first to know when our next studies are ready to go.
So I may be reaching out because I think the one you said is coming up is on giant breed dogs, and I happen to have a giant breed dog.
Absolutely.
So
you would be the
I may be
perfect
talking
person.
to you. So Anything that we have to worry about, or anything you've come across as far as side effects, or anything with your drug that you're testing for the Loyal 2 that you've come across?
We haven't seen anything that concerns us. There's a great deal of very specific testing that has to be done for safety under the FDA guidelines. And so, we can't declare a drug safe until the FDA gives us the thumbs up and says you've met that bar. So we have a great deal of safety data already. We're currently running another safety study as well. That's also part of the STAY study. So 1,000 dogs, half of whom will get placebo and the other half will get our drug, and we're monitoring them very closely. I will say on a purely anecdotal level that in one of our pilot studies, we had a dog named Rosie who found the drug really quite palatable. So she ate her entire month's supply all at one time, as some dogs are known to do. And we followed her very closely, no ill effects. This is a preventive medicine, and we're going to give it to healthy dogs to keep them healthy. So safety is absolutely top concern.
So for this study, is it an oral medication? Is it injectables? Is it something that the pet parent gives at home, or do they go into the clinic for the drug?
So we have 2 programs and 3 different drugs. The drugs that we're developing for large breeds, LOI1 and LOI3. LOI1 would be an injectable that you give about every 3 to 6 months. So you'd go in for your veterinarian to have that done. LOI3 works in very much the same way, but it's a daily oral chewable tablet. So we're trying to create sort of a palette of options so that dog owners have choices to fit their lifestyle and different options for giving the drug to their dog. LOI2 is the one that is a flavored daily chewable as well, which Rosie really enjoyed.
So Brennan, how close are we to the final decision by the FDA?
So we're pursuing 2 pathways. First, we're pursuing something called conditional approval. The FDA has a special pathway available for treatments that are addressing a problem that there's nothing else for, right? And aging is that kind of situation, right? We don't have any drugs or any other therapies that we know for sure extend health span and lifespan. So our drug qualifies for the conditional approval pathway. And if we are able to convince the FDA that all of the standards have been met, the standards for safety, which are the same as for any other drug approval, the standards for manufacturing, which are the same, and the standards for efficacy, which are a little different in the conditional approval pathway, we hope to have the approval by the end of this year and maybe have the drug available next year. Now, we're also pursuing what's called full or regular approval, and that's the 4 to 5 year study. We have about 3 more years to go on that study. Conditional approval is just temporary. It's a way of getting the drug available to dog owners faster so that we can start treating this problem, but it's not meant to be permanent, and we still have to go through a full clinical trial to back that up, and we're doing that. That would probably be about 4 to 5 more years.
But release could be as early as 2025.
Yeah, we're anticipating approval at the end of 2025 and hopefully early 2026 for the drug to be on the market.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So if a pet parent's listening to this and says, I'd love to be involved in one of these studies, what do they have to do? They reach out, and then what's expected of them, throughout the course of the study?
So we have a few requirements. Again, we want as real-world a population of dogs as we can. We are taking for the STAY study dogs who are 10 years and older and at least 14 pounds, up to 180 pounds. So some of the bigger mastiffs might not qualify, but pretty wide range of dog sizes. And if your dog meets those criteria and you sign up, you'll get a questionnaire which asks a few other questions about their health. Most of the things that older dogs experience in terms of health problems or drugs they may already be taking are not a problem. There are a handful of things that might make your dog not eligible, but I would just encourage them to, again, go to loyal.com, sign up, and you'll get the whole list of possible things that you need to fill out so we know if your dog is eligible.
Excellent. So the question about longevity and with the study, let's say we have an 11-year-old Labrador Retriever, and we assume 12 years of age, maybe a little bit more is life expectancy for that type of breed. With the study, what are we expecting? 13, 14, 17? Any thoughts on what this will do for those pets?
It's a very tricky question because there are a lot of studies looking at how we extend lifespan, and they seem to really vary a lot with exactly the kind of animal that you're working with. So what we've done is we've designed the study and powered it with enough dogs and enough sort of statistical strength to identify at least a 9 to 12 month difference. Okay. But I don't want to give people the impression that that's what we're aiming for. We're talking about trying to improve metabolic health throughout the lifespan. And my guess is that it will work better the longer it's given. It will work better in younger dogs starting earlier in life. Some dogs who are already prone to metabolic dysfunction may benefit more. But in order to see a difference in a 4 to 5 year study, we had to pick a number.
Sure.
So we picked, about a year, I think, is a reasonable place to start. And if you think about, again, that 1 to 7 years, even though it's not a very reliable guide, a year in a dog's life is a lot of time, and so that's what we're hoping for.
One of the things I think about with longevity is really it's not about lifespan. And we're looking at, can we gain 9 to 12 months? It's that health span. It's exactly what you said, metabolically, cognitive function. If we're seeing improvement in those measures that you're looking at, who wants to live older if they're not living older well? And so that's
Absolutely.
what's so great about your study is that we're looking at, even if it is the 12 years for that Labrador Retriever, it's a healthy, happy 12 years.
Exactly. I think that the reactive approach to aging, where we wait for the diseases and we treat them, is pretty good at delaying death, but it's not very good at preserving health span and function and joy, right? And in our world, as a veterinarian, things are a little different than they are for people, right? Because the end usually comes because we as owners feel that quality of life is not acceptable, and we make that choice. And so the only way that you would ever want to extend lifespan in dogs is by extending health span, by keeping them healthy and happy longer. And that's what we're aiming at.
So everyone's probably already asking you this question because we're talking about extending life or health span in animals, and dogs in particular. What about humans? So do you think there's going to be any translational medicine, translational effect with the results of this study, with potential people looking at this as a drug down the road for humans?
I think there very well might be. I mean, I think dogs are a wonderful model for how humans age. They live with us, they share our environments, they often eat from our plates. They're very, very connected to us. And biologically, they age in a very similar way to humans. They're a much closer fit than, rats and mice and some of the research animals that we normally look at. I also think it's kind of fun for us in veterinary medicine to be a little ahead of human medicine, because that doesn't happen very often. If we are able to demonstrate that our drug extends lifespan in dogs, that's going to be the first time that's ever happened in any species. Right. I think that's going to open a lot of doors in terms of funding and the regulatory environment for the same kind of work to be done in humans. Now, I'm a vet. That won't be my problem. I'm going to stick with dogs. But yes, I think there's some relevance for sure.
But we may enroll in that study ourselves.
Might be.
So give me some examples, if you would, of things that you obviously did for your own dog. 16 is fantastic. And that you would say to other pet parents out there listening, what are some things they can do right now, whether they have a younger dog, middle-aged, senior? Just give me some examples of things that even what you would say to your clients at home to help with overall wellness, longevity, health span.
Yeah, I think sometimes, in research, we get very excited about the latest things, the newest things, the technology. Most of the things that have the best evidence for helping your dog be healthy and live as long as possible are pretty simple. Keeping them a healthy weight. Most of us love our dogs with food, and that's great, but we have to restrain that tendency. Keeping them skinny, keeping them at a healthy body condition is really, really important. It's the most important thing we can do right now for keeping our dogs functional and healthy as long as possible. We know in humans that exercise is incredibly important for maintaining health and function as we get older. Same is true for our dogs. So, get up off the couch and get out for a walk with your dog. It's good for them. It's good for you. And then finally, regular veterinary care. There's very good research evidence showing that seeing your veterinarian regularly, keeping up with your vaccines, with your preventatives, with your blood work, with all the things they recommend really does make a difference. So those are, not cutting edge, highly exciting new things, but they're really, really important.
One last thing I would ask of the pillars of longevity. We talk about nutrition, we talk about exercise, like you were saying, wellness evaluations with your veterinarian. How about cognitive, mental health? We know that, at least from my understanding, that's a pillar of longevity and health. What can we do for our senior dogs to just keep them mentally involved and help with, that type of aspect? Because we see it in humans as they age. Are there things you can think of that we can do for our canine patients as well?
Absolutely. No, you're exactly right. The interaction with our dogs is a huge central part of our relationship with them, and cognitive dysfunction impairs that, and it hurts them and it hurts us. So keeping physical health is really important. Your brain and your body are obviously connected. So again, exercise, activity, good body weight, all of those help reduce the risk of cognitive dysfunction. And then the same kinds of things that we think of in people: mental stimulation, challenges, the opportunity to do new things and to overcome new challenges is really important. systems. So, the old idea that your dog can't learn a new trick when they get older is absolutely not true. And in fact, new tricks are a wonderful way of maintaining that bond with your dog and keeping them mentally healthy.
And I think what we're hoping is to see that the Loyal study shows that cognitively these dogs are just really staying active as well.
Absolutely. I
fit.
certainly hope so.
Yeah. So, Brendan, I can't thank you enough for being here today. And I've learned so much. Like I said, I'm going to reach out to you in the future to enroll our large breed as well. For pet parents that are interested, it's loyal.com.
That's right.
For them to enroll in the study. This is Dr. Sherman Canapp with Canine Longevity. And remember, it's all about your pet's health span, not just lifespan.
Good girl, Fachi.